Hi folks, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to another episode of I Like Big Boats and I Cannot Lie, the series where I talk about my favorite thing, submarines. I hope you're doing well, and I hope this episode has the capability to bore you to sleep. We're starting on the 23rd of November and ending on the 29th. There's lots to discuss, so let's dive right in. On the 23rd, we start in 1909 with the commissioning of USS Stingray, SS-13, and Grayling, SS-18. Stingray had been built by the Four River Shipbuilding Company of Quincy, Massachusetts, and launched on April 8th of that year, sponsored by Miss Elizabeth Stevens. She was later redesignated C2. Grayling, also built by Ford River Shipbuilding, was launched on the 16th of June in 1909 and sponsored by Miss Catherine H. Bowles, daughter of the president of the company, former U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Francis T. Bowles. In 1963, we have the keel laying of USS James K. Polk, SSBN 645. She was built by Electric Boat of Groton, Connecticut, as a Benjamin Franklin-class fleet ballistic missile submarine, but was later converted to an attack submarine and redesignated SSN 645. 1 year later, USS Aspro, SSN 648, was laid by Huntington Ingalls Shipbuilding of Pascagoula, Mississippi. Aspro was a Sturgeon-class attack sub, also known as a 637 class. Sturgeons we've covered before. They were the workhorses of the Navy's attack sub-fleet throughout the Cold War, eventually being phased out in favor of the Los Angeles, Seawolf, and lately the Virginia classes. Aspro's motto was faith, vigilance, service. The USS Pittsburgh, SSN 720, was commissioned on this date in 1985. Her home port was Groton, Connecticut, and her motto was Heart of Steel. Only 2 short entries for the 24th. USS R5, SS-81, launched on this date in 1918, sponsored by Miss Margretta Wood. R1 class vessels were coastal harbor defense boats commissioned after the end of World War I to protect the coastline. Next is USS Tenosa, SSN 606, laid in 1959. The contract to award her had been given to Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine, in December of 1958. Tenosa was a Permit-class sub, second ship to be named after the poisonous black tropical fish. On the 25th of November 1917, the USS 06, SS-67, was launched from Ford River Shipbuilding, sponsored by Mrs. Dessalines Wright, wife of Carroll Q. Wright, Jr., the prospective commanding officer of the vessel. The USS H-9, SS-152, one of the H-class subs originally built for the Imperial Russian Navy, was commissioned on this date in 1918. H-class subs were 150 feet, 4 inches long, and carried a complement of 2 officers and 23 enlisted men. They cost $564,422.85, hull and machinery, to manufacture. The USS S-2, SS-106, sailed to Philadelphia for her decommissioning in 1929. After being stripped, she was struck from the Naval Vessel Register in 1931, then sold for scrap on the 14th of September. Only a single entry for November 26th, USS Pompon, SS-265, a Gato-class diesel-electric sub, was laid down on this day in 1941. She had been built by Manitowoc Shipbuilding Company of Manitowoc, Wisconsin. She would serve in 9 war patrols throughout World War II before her decommissioning in 1960. On November 27, 1918, the USS O-13, SS-74, was commissioned at the New York Navy Yard. She was one of the later O boats designed by Lake Torpedo Boat Company to different specifications than the earlier ones designed by Electric Boat. The later ones didn't apparently perform as well because apparently EB was killing it back then and still are today. USS Sea Lion, SS-195, unfortunately famous for being the first sub lost in World War II, was commissioned on this date in 1939 with Lieutenant Julian K. Morrison, Jr. in command. Sea Lion was a Sargo-class submarine, first of her name. Sargo-class ships were among the first to be sent into war patrols after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, starting the day after the event. They were built between 1937 and 1939. 5 officers and 54 enlisted were crammed into a 310-foot, 6-inch sub capable of speeding along at 21 knots surfaced, 8.75 knots submerged, armed with 4 torpedo tubes forward and aft, and a 50-cal deck gun. In 1940, the USS Gar SS-206 was launched. She had been built by Electric Boat in 1939. Her sponsor was Mrs. Leila P. Pettingill, wife of Rear Admiral George T. Pettingill. Gar was the first of the Gar subclass, a slightly improved-upon version of the Tamber class, and was, unfortunately, the only one of her sister ships to survive the war. 5 years later, we have the decommissioning of USS Gurnard, SS-254, another Gato-class sub. She had taken part in 9 war patrols and earned 6 battle stars, as well as a Navy Unit Commendation Award. She was struck for the Naval Vessel Register on the 1st of May, 1961, and sold for scrap in September to the National Metal and Steel Corporation of Terminal Island, Los Angeles, California. On November 28th, the USS L-11 SS-51 was decommissioned in 1923 after 8 years of service. L-11, designed by Electric Boat, arrived at Submarine Base Hampton Roads on the 22nd of August. There she was decommissioned, stricken from the Naval Vessel Register, and there she was sold for scrap on the 28th of November, exactly 10 years later. USS Cobia SS-245 was launched on this day in 1943, sponsored by Mrs. C.W. Magruder. Cobia was a Gato-class sub. Yes, we say this a lot. There were 77 of them launched between 1941 and 1943. In 1973, we have 2 decommissionings, USS Cobbler, SS-344, and USS Corporal, SS-346, both Baleo submarines. Both were also transferred to the Turkish Navy as part of the Security Assistance Program. Last day of the week, November 29th, and we start in 1943 with the commissioning of the USS Flounder, SS-251. Flounder had been laid down by Electric Boat in 1942. She went on to serve 6 war patrols before her decommissioning in 1947. USS Hammerhead, SSN 663, was laid down on this date in 1965. She had been awarded to Newport News Shipbuilding and Drydock Company on the 28th of May, 1964. Finally, the USS Aspero appears again, this time with her launch in 1967. Sponsored by Mrs. Robert H.B. Baldwin, Aspero departed Pascagoula in February of 1969 to load torpedoes in Key West, Florida, before sailing to her home port in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, beginning a career that spanned nearly 30 years before her decommissioning. That's all for this week, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're bored to sleep. Take care, and I'll see you next time.